Hi, my name is Rebecca Shepard. I'm a tax attorney here at Frost Law, and I'm here with my partner, Peter Huckabo, and today we are talking about the Corporate Transparency Act. It is on the tip of everyone's tongue because the first deadline is rapidly approaching for March 31st, 2024. So if you are a new business where you just filed your documents with your Secretary of State, then you need to be paying attention. Peter, do you want to explain the background here and how we got here?
So the Corporate Transparency Act is the United States effort to align itself with some of the efforts that countries throughout the world are taking to crack down on money laundering and other financial crimes. So what the Corporate Transparency Act requires is the reporting of beneficial ownership information to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is a bureau of the Department of Treasury. What they're ultimately doing is creating a database of this beneficial ownership information for other agencies, governments to access as needed. So everything from local law enforcement to foreign governments will have an opportunity to, in very specific situations, figure out who is owning entities that are created by U.S. states or Indian tribes.
So who needs to be filing? So for John Smith, who woke up on January 1st and was able to file his articles of incorporation with his local state, he needs to be thinking about a March 31st, 2024 deadline, because 90 days for any new company that was organized in 2024 is the deadline to comply with the Corporate Transparency Act. Now, if you're a company that existed prior to January 1st, 2024, you actually have until December 31st, 2024 to comply. Originally, the timelines were going to be much, much shorter, but I think government felt bad for practitioners and for business owners and wanted to make sure everyone had plenty of time to comply with this new legislation.
So let's just put this in perspective. The number of companies that are going to be required to make filings of BOI or BOIR, as they call it, beneficial ownership information, is estimated to be 32.6 million businesses that were created prior to January 1st, 2024. An additional 5 million are estimated to have to file each year. So they're coming online, being created. What we're talking about here is businesses that are registering with a state, domestic businesses that are going down to their Secretary of State or similar government office to file articles to open these businesses. It also is capturing foreign businesses that are registering to operate in the states. That's who we're concerned about here and who the government is saying you need to make reports. It's not situations where you don't have entities, where you're a sole proprietor hanging out a shingle, or you have a general partnership that doesn't require any filing with a state, or Indian tribes are also considered their own jurisdictions for purposes of the Corporate Transparency Act.
So the reason those folks are exempted, and we'll go through some other folks that are going to be exempted as well, is because the government can find the sole proprietorship. Why? Because you are the entity. So Joe Smith is filing his Schedule C on his, on his 1040 with his name and social security number, name and EIN, but you can find Joe Smith because he is the business. He's the sole proprietor. What do you do if you've got an LLC that has been opened by someone who's not affiliated with the business? That's a lot harder for the government. And so those folks are the ones that are going to need to comply with these rules. So, Peter, how many exemptions are there for the Corporate Transparency Act?
Sure. So there's 23 exemptions that 22 of which are basically saying, are you otherwise sufficiently regulated by the government? The one very important one that's not necessarily that same idea is a large employer. The Corporate Transparency Act defines a large employer as an employer that employs more than 20 full-time employees or has $5 million in gross receipts. If you satisfy both of those tests, you're considered a large employer, and thereafter you're not required to make these filings related to the CTA.
Great. So what do people need to do? What do they need to get together in order to start this process?
So, trying to evaluate who you're going to report beneficial ownership, BOIR, information about really comes down to ownership information and control information. So what you need to do is understand first who owns the businesses. Do they have enough ownership to require filing of the BOIR reports? The other category is individuals who exert substantial authority or control over the business. And so in that regard, you may be looking at key employees, people in C-suites, management, those who are directing the day-to-day activities. So understanding what is a day in the life of some of your employees, and are they directing and exerting that control, over the business. You may be required to report about them as well. The BOIR information itself and what you are reporting is fairly straightforward. You are reporting names, identifying numbers like social security numbers, addresses. The one unique feature of this is you are providing a driver's license or passport or other state identification, uploading it actually to the FinCEN database. So that can be a little scary, and you're going to want to work through, do I have to make this filing? You're going to have key employees who are apprehensive about submitting something to FinCEN, and you're going to have to work through with them why they need to do this, what exactly you're trying to accomplish.
And then what happens if my key employees who have constructive control over my company move, or I move, or there's other information that changes over time? What does that person do?
Yeah, so there's an ongoing reporting requirement here and relatively short turnaround time. So you're going to have to monitor this information. If a driver's license number changes, you actually have an obligation to go back into the FinCEN database and update that information. If a passport, after 10 years, you get a new one, you get a new passport number, you're going to have to go back in and update that information on an ongoing basis. And it's a 30-day update period that you have to do it.
Okay, and what do you do if you just want to ignore this? This is not a regulation that you feel comfortable reporting. What could happen? Well, you could get a penalty. You could be subject to a penalty of up to $500 a day for noncompliance. It is not something that you want. It is important to comply with these rules. Talk to a professional if you feel uncomfortable about what it means to comply or what information is required of you, whether or not your company is subject to the Corporate Transparency Act or whether or not you're, eligible for one of those exemptions. But, we can help you through this process and make a determination for you, but you should not just ignore it. This is something that is important, is going to be with us for quite a long time now. So want to get comfortable with it now. Feel free to give us a call or shoot us an email with any questions, and we look forward to helping you. Thanks.